the greater masses over here. We're very happy that he and his wife, hello wife, Rosemary, where are you? Oh. She's here somewhere. There she is. Her hand is way back there. Stand up, Rosemary. Yay. Okay, we're so happy that she came along. So
we can go home now.
One silly little story. So Pastor Newman says, well, how many copies should I make? And he said, so what do you think, 30 or so? And I was like, no. I said, last rally we had 120. And he says, whoa. He said, your circuit has a lot more active members than what I'm used to presenting to. So we have 101 today. And so he brought, hopefully, enough for everybody to have some information to take back. And tomorrow, Pastor Newman will be the Mission Fest speaker or pastor at Good Shepherd in Holman, and will also be doing a Bible class presentation at around 10:30. If you go back to the greater La Crosse area and are saying, I really want my husband, my daughter and son to come and hear this presentation, everybody is welcome. We have extra baked goods tomorrow. Just kidding. To come and hear this presentation again. So you've got two opportunities. Without standing up here and blabbering anymore, Pastor Newman, thank you for consenting to come on the second Saturday of October. And I think with that, the last people, meaning my husband and Pastor Riki, will be seated.
First of all, can everyone hear me? All right, good. We're off and running. Two sheets, one the colored map, and the other one the Lutheranism in Ukraine. So you can take those and have those before you. First of all, I'm Pastor Roger Newman. I serve congregation in Oskaloosa, Iowa, and have been there for 42 years, and about the last 8 years of which I have been the WELS liaison to the Ukrainian Lutheran Church, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. My wife is with me today. She's already stood up for you, so I will not embarrass her again to do that. The first couple of minutes, I would just like to give you a little bit of review of the history of the Lutheran Church in Ukraine, and this is really just a thumbnail description. It's not too much, so take out that sheet. Christianity came to Kiev, but great Prince Vladimir came and was a Christian, established a church. Two very, very popular tourist sites. One is still being used. One is St. Sophia, which is not being used for worship, but now it's a tourist place, downtown Kiev. And the other is the Lavra, the monastery of the caves. That is still being used yet, but as a monastery. Those are two just magnificent. The Lavra is bigger than the Vatican in Rome. It is that huge of a place, and it's just a magnificent place. The Reformation worked its way. The effects of Luther and the teachings of Luther made their way into Ukraine. And when you look at the map, I'll show you where it goes all the way to southeastern Ukraine, where many Germans relocated, migrated to. And there are a lot of German Lutheran churches in southern Ukraine until Stalin. Stalin deported thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of Ukrainians in the 30s and 40s from southern Ukraine, and there are very few, but there are still Germans left there, but very few Lutherans in a Lutheran church in southern Germany. The two individuals, Stanislav Orkowski and Martin Krovitsky, were students of Luther at Wittenberg, and then they came back into the area that's known as Ukraine today. One of which, and I'm not sure which of the two, was a pastor. The other was not. The 17th century, the Germans and the Russians occupied what is known as Ukraine today. And this may help a lot in understanding why so much persecution against the Lutheran Church. For some reason, maybe it was because Lutheranism, Germany, the Russians to this day really despise the Lutheran Church, especially the leaders. I won't say the common people do, but the leaders do. Putin had made the comment, the worst man in the history of the world was Martin Luther. He did the most damage in the world of any man that ever lived. And so thus, the feeling of, and why in 1939, which would go down a little bit further there, when Russia came in, Lutheran pastors were executed, their churches were closed, confiscated, taken away from them, and so on. The 20th century, Theodor Zeckler, he was the founder of the Lutheran Church in Ivano-Frankivsk, which was in the western part of Ukraine. Then Pastor Theodor Yarchuk had the first hymnal. I believe it had 12 or 14 hymns in, and then brought the liturgy, which was the Eastern Rite. We use the Western Rite. The Eastern Rite is very much, there's a lot of repetition in the worship, and it's a long service. Every service, for the most part, in the Ukrainian Lutheran Church goes 2 hours. It's pretty close to that anyway. But it's a beautiful liturgy. So the thought is, well, why don't we introduce some of our liturgy to them? This is their culture. You can't just go in and change a culture of a people and just say, well, you should use our liturgy and you should go away from that because people get tired of being in church for 2 hours. People wait all week to be in church for 2 hours there. They love to be in God's house and such. So 1925, 1939, Lutheranism was really growing in the western part of the country. There was 25 known congregations. It was thought that there was 10, 15,000 Lutherans in the area in western Ukraine. And then 1939, the Russians invaded. And that's when all the persecution of the churches, properties taken away. Of those 25 churches, none of the buildings, if they're even existing today yet, were ever given back to the, so one would think when they became free again in 1991, they would have access to all those buildings. No, they did not. And so we only have, I'll probably use that terminology a lot, they're brothers and sisters. You are in fellowship with them. They are your brothers and sisters in Christ. So when I say we, it's all of us. You are part of the Ukrainian Lutheran Church too because of your confession in church, in faith in Jesus Christ. And so anyway, 1991 it became independent. So the thinking was they could come back into some of their own former church buildings that were still there. No, the government seized them. One of the problems was in 1991, they became free of Germany. That was their Independence Day. But the Ukrainians had no money. So oligarchs from Russia, which is the wealthy people, oligarchs, the wealthy people that had all the money, bought up the majority of the land in Ukraine, but did not necessarily live in Ukraine. But they had their people ruling Ukraine. And so why was there all kinds of corruption? Because basically Ukraine was being ruled by Russia. And the people didn't have a lot of say. And because of persecution and such that they were aware of that happened in the past, there is still that idea of, why do you want my telephone number? Why do you want my email address? Why do you want to know where I live? We have a vacation Bible school program, and we have 100 kids there, 10 of which are from the church, 90 are prospects, right? If you were to go to one of those homes and say, thank you for having your child in vacation Bible school this week, they would never probably come again. How'd you find out where we live? What? Yeah. It's getting better. It's getting better. Things are, a lot of things are changing with regard, but that's some of the stuff that I came into and found out by just being there. In 1993, Ternopil and Kiev were the two congregations that ELS, together with the Thoughts of Faith, the parasynodical organization with the ELS, started those two congregations. So if you look at that, 1994, next year, 2024, is the 30th anniversary of the Ukrainian Lutheran Church. It's a young church body. How old is this church? What anniversary are you celebrating sometime in the future? About 127 now. So, 4 times older than that. And so a lot of growing pains, a lot of such that a beginning church goes through, they went through. And in 1994, the St. Sophia, the seminary, was opened in Ternopil. Maybe look at the map just real quick, and I'll get those last things. In the very center of the map, you'll see the city of Kiev. Perhaps I should say this right now. Why don't we pronounce it Kiev? Why is it Kiev? Kiev is the way the Russians pronounce it. So if I were to pronounce it, what's going on in Kiev here these days, Bishop? He would be very unhappy with me and would be very disappointed with me because the language is somewhat close, but there are some differences and such. Kiev, you go about halfway between Kiev and the Russian border. That's where Chernobyl is. And that's what you're familiar with the nuclear disaster. And there's still areas around Chernobyl that are still affected by the radiation that spilled and such at that time. And so whenever I say Chernobyl, don't confuse that with Chernobyl. Chernobyl is on, as you look on the left-hand side, kind of towards the bottom of Ukraine there, just above Ivano-Frankivsk is the congregation there. So, 1996, we were officially registered as a church body in Ukraine. Then Thoughts of Faith also has the Gift of Life, and the mobile clinic still are operating that. But at some point, they were not financially able to continue to support the Ukrainian Lutheran Church. And so they asked, or the bishop asked, if the WELS would be interested in supporting them financially. And so President Schrader got together with President Molstad of the ELS and asked, would it be all right if we subsidize them for the remainder of this year and then perhaps going forward, which was agreed upon, and then WELS became now, you are supporting a church body. We do not have missionaries there. A lady approached me here during the break and said, are you in Ukraine now, living in Ukraine now? No, we don't have any missionaries there, but my position is the liaison between our church body and their church body, and then with the idea of doing things that can promote growth and ideas for them going forward. A young church, the situation with just the idea of your neighbors and contacting people and the hesitancy to do that, they were just basically having services and maybe Bible classes. And so the opportunity to do some outreach, okay, we can't go there, but we can bring them here. So let's do some things that we can bring the people to the church. And that worked really well. It was going great. A number of churches were having activities that were bringing the public into their church. Musical events mostly is what brought them in. But then once in, they also got the word. And they heard the word, and they received that. And by doing so, they had actually prospects. They actually had people that were signing cards or letting them know what their number was to tell them about future events or whatever with the church. And then COVID. Everything stopped. Okay, COVID is kind of on its way out. Then comes February 24th, 2022. And now there's a war going on in Ukraine. And so that's my position. I won't go back and rehash any of the things that happened prior to what's going on now. And so my presentation will basically be on that going forward. Take the map, please. Your brothers and sisters in Christ. Congregation in Kiev, Resurrection Congregation, numbers about 110 souls right now. You've got your bearings there on the center there. Go off to the right and you'll come to Kharkiv. Kharkiv was the very first city that was attacked when the war started. Pastor Victor Hostoff said, I got up that morning to hear sounds of like trucks or machinery out in the street. And I opened my drapes and looked out, and there were tanks coming down my street. And he said, and I knew the war had begun. And that's where it began in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is the second largest city in the country of Ukraine. Kiev, of course, is the largest. And so that was a prize area for Russia to capture that city. I suspect, expecting to capture it within a very short period of time, and onward to Kiev, and then Kiev would fall, and Russia would have sole control of the country at that point. It never happened that way, as you well know. Pastor Hostov in Kharkiv go right below it, serves a mission congregation in Poltava and also Izum. Izum was under Russian occupation for over a year, so he was not able to see his members there for over a year. There were a couple opportunities where he was able to get some things to some of his members, but then finally they were liberated from Russia, and he was once again able to come there and to bring medical help, food, clothing, things that they needed there as well. Interrupt from the churches for just a moment. You've probably heard in the news in the early going, the Donbass area. The Donbass area in Russia is where all the fighting is going on. The two oblasts, which are like states for us, in the far right there, Luhansk and Donetsk, those two together are the Donbass. And that's where fighting has been going on probably since 1991 when we became free. Luhansk believed they were labeled a terrorist group of people in that oblast there. Donetsk, they just wanted to be not governed by Russia and not governed by Ukraine. And so they were always just the kind of the problem children there, so to speak. Also, in general, I'm sorry, I don't want to go into too much history and stuff with you, but to help you to understand a little bit. If you look at basically the right hand from Kyiv, go down, and in all that area there, 1932 and 33, what happened in Ukraine? The world reported it as the Great Famine, where it was reported that 10 million Ukrainians starved. There was no famine. The crops were fine that year. There was plenty of food. The Russians just starved them. The world reported it as the Great Famine, and that the result of the famine was this horrendous loss of life there, until pictures came out. Because the Russians took pictures of some of the things that they did. And when the pictures came out, then they realized that this was genocide. And it was terrible. So anyway, who occupies this land? Someone has to do the farming and such like that. So the Russians send people down there to occupy and to farm and to control this land. And so now you have Russians who have come down, who think they're Russians, but are living in Ukraine and are under Ukraine rule, and say, I'm not sure about that. And that was the thinking, I think, behind Putin and the Russians going in. These people will view us as liberators. And then they found out, no, they like their freedom more than being under communist rule. So that's that area there. And so that helps you to understand a little bit why all this fighting. Yeah, it's a civil war, so to speak. So it's kind of like they're all kind of family, but that's what's going on. Quickly going on there. You have, going down from Izum, you have Alexandria. That's a small congregation, and elderly man is still serving that group. Next to it is Zaporizhia. The power plant, the nuclear power plant is near there. They broke a water dam that cools the reactors, and there was a fear that they might have a nuclear disaster there about 2-3 months ago, but it was averted, and so hopefully that still is. Zaporizhia was also under attack early on in the war, and the pastor had to evacuate there, didn't have services there probably for about 6 or 7 months before he got back. Tokmak is just south of Zaporizhia. That is still under Russian occupation. There are no services being held there. I get together with the pastors for a monthly Bible study, and each time we'll just kind of give me a review of what's happening in your ministry this month, and I'll ask Pastor Fashenko, what is happening in Tokmak, and still doesn't know, no contact there. Going down, you'll come to Kherson, under Russian occupation. Pastor Sulman is not able to have services right there. KRIM, that little area there, that's Crimea. That's what was taken away by the Russians, and we kind of didn't do anything about it, just left them occupied. Ukraine still believes that's their territory, and Russia is just it's occupied territory. It's not Russia, it's theirs. Hamov, then above Hamov is Brezhnevata. Brezhnevacha's got a great story there. People from surrounding villages are coming to the pastor and asking, can you come to our town, to our village, to our city, and bring the gospel? And they are doing that. That's me. What in the world is that I got on silent? Okay, so much for that. Ivanica, then going over to the left, Ivano-Frankivsk, that's where the first pastor came in and established there. Lazarivka, well, then Ternopil, Kremnitz, and then coming back towards Kiev, you have Malin and Radishmil. And those are the congregations. And in the west, basically from Ivanica over to the west, those are relatively free of any Russian, a great deal of Russian problems. We'll see in a minute, though, there are still Russian problems there. So anyway, pictures, please. Oh, there she is. I wanted you to see Sophia. I'm not used to these things either, so I think I'm losing it. There we go. Whenever I go to... Okay, what am I doing wrong? Okay. So you get lost in the middle of your sermon on it? Oh, okay. Okay. I want you to... I want you to see Sophia. Whenever I go to Ukraine, there is the driver that the bishop has, and he drives us everywhere and is always involved in everything we're doing, and we got to be close friends. His daughter is this little girl's godmother, and the family lives about 75 miles southeast of Kyiv. The family was going to church one morning, walking to church on the street. Missile was flying overhead, was intercepted and taken out, and the shrapnel falls, and this little girl was killed. In an area where there was really no fighting, no real missile strikes, no attacks or anything like that. But that's all over Ukraine. You just aren't completely safe. Air raid sirens go off every day. That means that somewhere in the country, a missile has been fired. And so, because the range of some of these missiles are 700, 800 miles, so you don't know where they can land. And some do get through defense systems, and as a result, take people's lives. Please, next. That is Holy Trinity Lutheran Church there in Kremnitz. And do the next two pictures, too. That one and that one. Okay. This is also a common occurrence in Ukraine right now. When someone from the city or village or town dies, the body is brought back, and the people gather around the town square, and they will welcome that fallen soldier back. And this one was a particular, was really involved in the community, and so they had a huge turnout for this funeral. And these take place all the time. And I think I said Holy Trinity. It's Holy Cross Lutheran Church. That is the church in the background. That used to be a restaurant, and it was renovated into a church now that the ULC is using. And we spend a lot of time there. All their pastors' conferences, their synod conventions and such are held there in Kremnitz. And so that's probably almost a daily occurrence, maybe not always in Kremnitz, but throughout the country. Go on. People always say, where is Ukraine? And I will tell them it's just a little south of Minnesota and Nebraska, and you'll find Ukraine nestled in there. No. The first few slides were kind of serious stuff, just to kind of make an impression upon you that this is what they live with every day. This is a constant concern that they have. This precious little girl going to church. And these things are happening all the time. Next. Ukraine kind of gives you a picture and a map there where it is, the Russia, Belarus, and Poland. Poland has been very wonderful taking in refugees. Germany has been very good in taking in refugees and such. So, go on. Yep, go on. Looking at downtown Kyiv, at a portion of downtown Kyiv. It's estimated to be about 7 million people that live in Kyiv right now. Go on. The Vikings. When we think about it, what are we, 240 years old as a country? 200, I'm going to do my math here. I don't want to do it very quick and embarrass myself in front of you, but not all that old. And, here from the thousands of years ago, and their history goes back over and over and over again with all kinds of things that have happened. We struggle in our country with some of the past injustices as we see, back with the Civil War and slavery and such like that. These people deal with past injustice, past injustice, past injustice, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. So that's why I included that picture there. This would be annoying preaching with this, wouldn't it? Okay. This is the kitchen table, or the dining room table, excuse me, at the bishop's. And bishop simply means president. So if Mark Schrader were the head of the Ukrainian Lutheran Church, we would say Bishop Schrader. That's all it means there. This is his dining room table. Had many a meal with him there. It's also where we get the business done and where we talk about things and such like that. The stoles that adorn things, pictures and the crosses, you'll see a lot of that. That's very typical Ukrainian. Go on. A rural hospital. A rural hospital probably near Rivne in northern. The bishop's mother-in-law was here at the time. She was in for he didn't really tell me what it was, but she was in for about 30 days. And I jokingly said to him, wow, I wouldn't want to see that bill. And he says, yeah, it probably cost about $125, $130. And so there is very little. I don't know of any medical insurance that they have, but it's not as though they don't have adequate doctors and things like that. But corruption is very much a part of Ukraine, and so you and I were going to have a knee replacement or a hip replacement or something like that. The doctor said to you, I can get you in next week. Doctor looks at me and says, I can get you in about 4 months. Wait a second. What's going on? Next week and 4 months? He bribed them. He bribed them, and so that's why he got them in quicker. If you go to court in anything, you had better bribe the judge because you know the other side already has. And so that's where, the corruption and such comes in, is the fair system and such. And as someone once told me, well, perhaps if they paid doctors and judges that what a doctor deserves in salary, perhaps they wouldn't be doing that. But the Soviet mentality was anything with education, pay them less so you have less of it. They didn't want people to have a lot of knowledge and things like that because the state is everything. Russia is everything, not the people. And that was the mentality that they had through all the years there. This is Holy Cross, Kremnitz. Go on. This is from the Bora Castle, looking down upon the church in Bora Castle there. A lot of history behind that. I've been up there about 4 or 5 times because anyone new coming there, you'll always take us up there to see the sights up there and looking down at the church. Go on. There's looking up to the Bora Castle. It was rainy that time when I was there when I took a lot of these pictures, so I apologize for some of the clarity of them. Go on. Up there is the Bora Castle ruins. Go on. Stoles, flowers, very much a part of the altar, and a lot of. Sometimes it almost looks like it's very busy in the front, almost like it's too much stuff up there. But they all have that's their culture. That's their purpose. Go on. You got a new altar. One person hand carved all that by himself. Took years for him to do that new altar, and it is beautiful. First pastors conference that we had there. Go on. And there's me preaching. I don't know a lick of Ukrainian. So it's like I say a sentence and the bishop repeats the sentence in Ukrainian. So I'm not sure what I'm preaching there. I've taken his word for it. Go on. When I was there in October, I said, all right, I give up. Why are these boards on the floor between each of the pews there? Because winter's coming. Okay, it's cold. And so you had the boards there so your feet aren't on the cold floor. Most of the churches, perhaps not in the large cities, usually will keep their heat around 50 degrees in the wintertime. Now, in the spring, 50 feels really great. Feels rather warm. In the fall, it does not feel so warm and such. And so that's what they put those out there, and that's what they have. People have their feet on there so they aren't on the cold floor. Go on. Oh, they always have to give us gifts. Here they're giving my wife and I gifts, little things, little remembrances and so on. Go on. I love Ternopil. There we go. Keep going. Looking at that from left to right, Bishop Hornpachuk, myself, Pastor Taras Kakowski, who serves in Ternopil. Go on. This is the church in Ternopil. All right, I'm an amateur photographer. I didn't get the steeple fully in. I know. It's not like I could go back right now and do it, but I will soon get back there again sometime. Go on. Inside the church there in Ternopil, this is St. John, St. James congregation in Ternopil. This is the second of, well, if you count Kiev, that's the third church building that they have. Go on. A group of us that were there that day. Go on. Always have those snacks, little finger foods and things like that. A spread on a piece of bread, chicken, ham, whatever, that type of thing. They've made sure you always had plenty of that to go on. Yep. Yeah, you can go on. Beautiful, beautiful church in Ternopil. It was a Catholic church, and when Russia came in the Second World War, there was absolutely no reason whatsoever to bomb this church, but they did, and they destroyed the church. And there are pictures of what it was before, and basically down below what it was after, and now it's, I'm not sure, apartment buildings or whatever, but on our walking tour, Pastor Kakowski showed me that and said that. On the walking tour, I didn't take a picture of the building, and this is what Shannon Bomey was with me from Mission Journeys, and we were walking, and he says, this building brings me great sadness. Okay? Why does it bring you great sadness? He says, that's where my grandfather was executed by the Russians. The Russians were holding prisoners there in Ternopil, and the Germans were coming in and were going to overrun the city. And so they had to flee. So rather than letting the prisoners go, they executed all of them. And his grandfather was one of them. Walking by that every day, living right there. I mean, the first few years of being in Ukraine, people came to me with all these stories. And it just broke your heart to hear some of the stories of what they went through. And but they wanted to tell their story. So I listened, and I listened, and I listened, and all the stories of atrocities and things that have happened. And the ones that are probably the most wrenching, or at least rank up there as the most wrenching, are when they'll say, we don't know whatever happened to our father. We don't know whatever happened to our grandparents. They were just gone, and we don't know where they were, or where they are, which is similar to today. Ukraine is a population of about 42 million people. It is estimated that at least a quarter of those people have left the country. And of that quarter, there's probably a possibility that about 1,000 to 2,000 of those have been, or million, not 1,000, about 1 or 2 million of those have been taken captive to Russia and put to work on farms and things like that. But people don't know where they are. And then now it's like, what happens when the war ends? Will we be able to return? Will people come back? That's a good question. Will they come back? Go on. I know it's just because I'm there visiting and such like that, but wow, they put on a feast. They put on a feast. It was like, they'll start off with bringing some slices of bread with some ham and cheese or some beef. Or not so much beef. Beef is not a big thing there. I'm not sure why. It's not that they don't like it. It's just not that much. And so you're eating one, and I'm reaching to have another one because it tastes pretty good. And the guy I was with, who was new to these things, he said, better not. He says, there's a whole lot more coming. So then they come with the second course, and they come with a third course, and they come with a fourth course, and you're stuffed. And then they'll say, dessert will be ready in about 10 minutes. It's like, okay. So just, one of the courses there. And they knew that, full disclosure here, I grew up just north of Wausau, Wisconsin. And so they knew that I was originally from Wisconsin, so they made sure they had a cup on hand that had Wisconsin on it. I said, all right, got fish fries and Packers, Badgers, Brewers, Bucks. First Bible translated into Ukrainian. They made a monument where that took place. A beautiful structure that hardly anyone goes to see. It is off the main roads, and when you get off the main road, it's not as though you're taking your life into your own hands, but expect to go maybe about 1 mile in an hour or whatever, because it's just, the roads are terrible. When you have potholes in the spring, multiply that by about 100, and you know what back roads in Ukraine are like. There is money to fix roads. Every oblast is given money to fix roads. But when it comes time to fixing roads, where's the money? What happened to the money? Now all of a sudden they're figuring out if the roads are better, more business comes, and more people come, and commerce is better. This is before COVID and the war, of course. And so now the roads are starting to get better, but now the war changed everything. What? 500-600-year-old copies of Bibles? Wow. Isn't that something? Isn't that amazing? Go on. Oldest Christian church in Eastern Europe. Still being used. There are probably about 20, 25 people that worship there. It's an Orthodox church. Just, again, off the beaten path. When Bishop took me there, I was like, where are we going? These roads are terrible and such. And that's what he came across. Go ahead. Alicia, in the middle there. She is a member of the congregation. And that's President Schrader's brother, Neil, by the way. And he was with me the first couple of times I went over there. Alicia and her mother. When there was a revolution in Russia, I believe it was 2013. Alicia was a volunteer for the Red Cross, helping wounded people and such, and she was wounded by a sniper's bullet, and she became the topic of news photos all over the world. Show the next picture, please. And if you recall way back then, about 10 years ago, the news there of Alicia, the Red Cross worker. She should have really died from her injuries. Doctors say it was a miracle that she was able. She was struck in the neck, and it was amazing that she did not die. She was taken to the hospital. Bishop was able to go to the hospital because she had become such a news figure. He was able to have basically a little sermonette. He says it is by God's providence and God's grace and through our Savior Jesus Christ that she is with us yet today, and he was able to do that in a public forum there. And so God intends, or the devil intends one thing, and God can work a bad thing into something good. She is now a nurse, and is a very active practicing nurse there in Kyiv. Go on. St. Sophia. And again, an overcast day, so you don't get the beauty of the onion domes and such like that. Go on. Are you familiar with Ukrainian Easter eggs? if you have the real McCoys, they will be actual real eggs that were painted by the grannies and such to make a little extra money and so on. And an egg would take probably 7 to 10 hours to paint, and so just for one, okay? This mosaic, whatever you want to say, that is all made of Ukrainian Easter eggs. So if you were able to go closer to that, you would see it. Yeah, there's each little egg there, and they made this mosaic of Jesus. Go ahead. In that uprising in 2013 and in the war that ensued afterwards, all the fallen victims are on a wall there in Kyiv of the pictures of those who have fallen in battle. And the next picture will show, that's one of the members of the Ukrainian Lutheran Church that lost his life. This was prior to the war. This was when all the hostilities in the Donbass area were going on. It was constantly going on. Okay, go ahead. Pictures of the people that had fallen in that massacre that took place. Go ahead. St. Michael, and you'll see it's under construction. I have never been there when it hasn't been under construction. It's like an ongoing process that takes years and years and years and years. And so, who knows, maybe one day I'll see it when it's finished. Beautiful inside. This is the Lavra, the cave, the monastery of the caves. And they're actually literally caves. So you can go through a portion of that and go see where they study in the caves. And I guess, go ahead. Inside, notice the benches. So that'll give you an idea how big and how tall these paintings are. Massive, massive things. And this is one of probably, 500 that are in the cave of the monastery of the caves in the Lavra. Go ahead. Again, same thing. For the first number of years before Mission Journeys got involved, we put together Vacation Bible School teams to go there to have Vacation Bible School in the summer, obviously, in some of the places there. So the one team went, one of the teams that went, they got there just about time for the evening meal, and they thought they were going to go out and get some authentic Ukrainian food, and they were taken to McDonald's. And this is the inside of McDonald's. And man, is that thing always packed. It's crowded as can be, and it's like, wow. But the big question is, does the Big Mac or does the Quarter Pounder actually have beef? They will not disclose that and such, and so, yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is with the beef there, but, yeah. Go on. Okay, this, I talked about the Great Famine, the years when the mills no longer ground the wheat and such, and that was supposed to be depicting that. Next picture, please. She's holding 5 heads of grain in her hand. You'd have to get a little bit closer to see that. Russia said if anyone has more than 4 heads of grain in their house, they will be executed. So if you had a loaf of bread in your house, you were executed. That's what took place during what they referred to as the Great Famine. It was a great genocide. And the monument behind, I think the next picture has that. Okay, this is the pictures the Russians took. And now you go inside, and it's a circular area, and you just walk around. All the pictures are there of the atrocities. And you'll see the starved animals there and some of the people in the background. Go on. That is the shrine, the monument to the Holodomor. The Holodomor is there's a 1-hour documentary. You'd have to Google it, the Holodomor documentary, and it's well worth watching if you wanted to read a little history about that. Go on. This is St. Sophia, the seminary that has closed. How much time do I have? Okay, all right, good. I don't want to wear out my welcome. Okay, all right. St. Sophia closed, I think 2013 or 14, but that's where, and so right now the situation is we have pastors that are getting near retirement age in Ukraine, and we don't have a system to train new pastors. So hopefully we can get our PSI program at the seminary involved in that. We'll have to see. Go on. This is the backside. It's not a good shot of it. This was one of the churches. This was in Ivano-Frankivsk that was taken away. Ivano-Frankivsk, the people have the deeds, copies of the deeds for the property, but the government says, no, it's no longer yours. It's ours now. Go on. The pastor in Ivano-Frankivsk. Go on. And this is Lazarivka. This has no heat. So in wintertime, the attendance isn't so good. And in the summertime, it gets a little warm in there, so but they still have their worship services there. Go on. Probably a more wealthy farmer, as he has 2 horses connected to his wagon. And so you get off the beaten path, and this is how agriculture and how people go about their daily lives without a lot of the modern conveniences of farming today and such like that. Go on. The women bringing the cows home. So, what about the men? Trying to get the men involved in the church is not only a problem in Ukraine, but in many areas of world mission. Yes, it is children, mothers, and grandmothers that are very much active in bringing their children to church. And now, how do we get the men to get involved? Russia did not want the men. They wanted them to be submissive and under control, and so they fed them vodka and vodka and vodka and vodka, and 75% of the males at one point were alcoholics. And as such, they didn't do much. So the women did a lot of the work. And when the cows are coming home to milk, you give them the right of way. You get out of their way, and they come through. Go on. What are those things in the tree? I'm sorry? Bird's nest. Oh, okay. No? Getting close to Chris. Oh, what said something? Mistletoe. That is mistletoe. And they said, take as much of it as you want. Get it out of here because it kills the trees. Yeah, it's kind of like a parasite. It's such. But that is mistletoe there. We are now in the Carpathian Mountains in western Ukraine, and this is one of the chalets that are there. Beautiful, beautiful area. Really nice. We stayed overnight one night here. Beautiful accommodations and such. And I think there were probably about 16 or 20 of these, and there were only 3 occupied, and it was June. It was vacation time for the kids and stuff like that. And it's like Ukraine can be a very tourist attractive country. In the West, there are many forts and things like that, and so on. And this was just a beautiful area. And a couple more pictures will show that. Go ahead. Rosemary and I took this picture, not because we wanted to be camera hogs, but I took this picture also, looking back at the shocks of hay. You can almost be certain that there is no tractor in that area there. Everything is cut with a scythe, allowed to dry. That's all gathered by hand, and the horses and the wagons and things like that. All their agriculture in that part in many parts of the country are just that way. Go on. One of the mountain streams there in the Carpathians. Beautiful area. Go ahead. The lady in the picture, I can't think of her last name. I think it's Alexandra is her first name. She is a dance instructor. Back in 1980, when the Russians hosted the Olympics, for the opening ceremony, she danced in the opening ceremony for the Olympic Games. And so we spent a night at their house. A bit of a story behind that, but we don't have time for that, how he ended up there. Next picture. There we are. And of course, you have to have a little wine on the table and stuff along with the meal. Go on. One of the, this is probably the best preserved of the fortresses and things in western Ukraine. And this is down in Communist Podilsky. And so there we are again, hogging the camera on the walls of the fort there. Go on. And if you're saying, he looks a lot younger in those pictures, you're right. I haven't been back to Ukraine since COVID. And I look forward to getting back there sometime, but it's kind of not safe right now, so I won't go. Remember in the Bible, we're talking about, I think it was our reading just a week or two ago, wasn't it, where they took the man and threw him in the pit until he could pay his bill? This was the pit for the people that owed or had bills to pay and such, part of the fortress there. Go on. A map of where all the fortresses are, western Ukraine. So that's what I mean. A lot of touristy activity could be done there. Could happen there. Go on. The beautiful dress of the dancers, and there is Alexandria waving. I think she was waving for Rosemarie to come onto the picture, get into the picture as well. And what you don't see in the picture here are all of the parents and grandparents of these dancers taking pictures of the American in the photo. Yeah. A quick story. I love this one. We stopped at a gas station out in the middle of wherever we were going there, and we stopped at a gas station, and so I went inside and I looked around and stuff like that as they were filling up with gas and so on. And then as I'm coming out, the bishop and Sasha, who I told you about before, the driver, they're laughing with each other, and they turned to me and they said, the people inside, they said, that was the first time they've ever seen an American. And he said, the one said to the other, he looks like John Wayne. All right, I'll go with it. Go on. I should take this out. Okay, the president of the Ukrainian Lutheran Church, the president of the WELS, the president of the Bulgarian Lutheran Church, and who's this guy photobombing this picture here and getting in on that? So yeah, I got to meet there. We've had some falling out, obviously, with the Bulgarian Lutheran Church, so they are no longer in fellowship with us right now, but he was a nice young man. Pleasure meeting him. Go on. This is where they worship in Zaporizhia, a rented facility. There's a lot of other parts of this building that aren't used. It's kind of like an empty warehouse, and all of a sudden here's this room where they use for worship. Go on. That's when President Schrader was there. We were there for the dedication of the church in Kyiv. Go on. And this was the day of dedication for the new church building in Kyiv. The pastors there that were there with us. President Schrader preached, and then he and I had parts in the liturgy that day as well. So that was a nice occasion. Go on. That is the church in Kyiv that was built. But notice, this is an old picture. So off to the right, it seems to be open now, they built another one of the apartment complexes that goes well above the steeple of the church, within 10 feet of the church. I mean, their windows, you can literally look out into their living room during a service, because there are windows on the side of the church as well, and the church there, and so they built this up. But this is near the downtown area of Kyiv, and that land that is very expensive property. It was very fortunate that we were able to get that property and such. It was part of a deal to give up some other property so as to get this, and so that's why they were able to do it, because otherwise they would never been able to afford it. Go on. Again, another picture of the church. Another picture. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. The Great Wall. This is when Vladimir came to Kyiv, and this was part of the Great Wall they built around the city there, and this is the remnants of what is left yet. Yeah, growing up in central Wisconsin, my dad raised beef cattle, and so a lot of the barns were stone and mortar foundation. And stone and mortar lasted around 75 years. And so there would be all these caved-in barns and the foundations and such like that if they weren't rebuilt, and then that's just the way they were, and kind of becomes an eyesore almost and such. 75 years. what, 1,500 years and they still have part of the Great Wall left? Not the whole thing isn't, but inside. I think the next picture I have of that. Go ahead. Yeah, that is a picture of the original wall back from 950. Bishop's son, weddings there. Interesting about weddings. Here, what? Typical wedding. You have the wedding, you have a reception, maybe a dance. All right. There, you have the wedding, and it could be like 3 weeks later you have the dance, or you have the reception, or you have a meal and such like that. It's hardly ever connected. It is sometimes. I think it's becoming more so now, but it wasn't at one point. That was connected to the day. So we had a pastor's conference one time, and it was on a Tuesday night. The pastor's conference started on Wednesday. We got there Tuesday night, ate at the restaurant, and in the restaurant there was a big celebration, and they said, wow, it's a wedding. I go, on Tuesday? And, okay. And, oh, no, they were married a while ago. They just had the celebration, so it doesn't all connect there at the time. Go on. Some more, I think the last ones, I just have some of the pictures there of some of the people there. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is in Brezhnevata. Had COVID not happened, we had the funds to go ahead and to begin the construction of a worship facility for them. The first step in building, obviously you purchase the land, but then the first formal step that is taken by the church is the setting of the cross, it's referred to. So this was the setting of the cross, and that tells the community that a church is going to be built on this site at some time in the future. And so, as far as I know, that cross is still sitting there, and we're still waiting for this war and stuff to come to an end so that we can build the church there. Go ahead. Anna, she's living in the States now. She went to Luther Prep. Go ahead. Pastor Soman there in the back. Go ahead. Two little kids dressed up there. This is in Brezhnevata. This is a little house that is used for worship. It gets kind of crowded in there. Go ahead. There's a Sunday school at Ternopil. Again, Ternopil. Doubles. Doubles again. Ooh, okay, are we going the right direction? That's me. I probably put that. Some singers came in to sing at the church there. Proud of their heritage, the dress and such that they wear. We have the choir gowns as well. They do too. These were not members, but it was a group that came in to sing to the church. Go on. Orphans are a huge problem in Ukraine. There are so many orphans there. And they are kept in an orphanage probably until 15 or 16 years old, maybe 17, and then they're on their own. And this was a granny in the back taking care of all these orphans. And the bed that she was sitting on was the only bed in the house. So, got to know some of the outfits, or the things they wear. I just took that picture because there's so many of these, just kind of these drab buildings and such. And this was on the Russian side of Kyiv. There's basically the city is split in two, and all the older buildings there. There's not much beauty to them at all. Go on. Cemeteries, they do this, and it looks as though the grass is cut here, but they do not take care of the grass and things in the cemeteries. And so what happens is you have a lot of these beautiful stones and the flowers that adorn them, but the grass is growing like 3 feet in the middle of summer, and it's just, it's like, boy, wouldn't somebody take care of that? Obviously, this is in the fall, and doubles. Okay, go on. Keep going. Again, the singers there at Kremnitz, and then the wedding ceremony that's taking place. This is where we have our meals when we have the conferences in Kremnitz. There's a restaurant that we go to for our noon meal and our evening meal. And this is the Bora Castle. We saw bits of that before. I'll save that story for tomorrow. Go ahead. Very, very briefly, he was taken prisoner by the Russians in Kremnitz for preaching the gospel. He wasn't a pastor. He was a deacon in the church. But they said, if you preach the gospel, we will have you executed. And they could not prove that he was preaching the gospel, which he was doing probably like about once or twice a month at about 3 o'clock in the morning in his home. And the Russians said, we know you're doing it, we know you're doing it, we catch you. So they imprisoned him for 3 years. And he came back out, and he started doing the same thing. The Russian commander who gave him all this grief and imprisoned him said, you know, I will have you executed next time. One time in the middle of the night, a woman comes to the door and says, my husband is sick and he called for you. It was the person that did this. And he had him come over to the house, and he was afraid, you know, is this a trick? They want me to come over to have a prayer for this man who said if I do that type of thing, I'll be killed. And so am I being set up and such? But he went, and the person did die. And he said, I don't know if he died a believer or not, but I was able to have a prayer with him and such. So that's this individual. Okay, go ahead. A little meal after Revival Fright Keys. We had a mission event there before COVID, and we had a meal after the mission event. So that's their kitchen table. Pastor Krakowski and I, at the end of a pastor's conference, we're relieved it's all over. Time to go home. No. Okay, go ahead. We bought this van for Pastor Soman in southern Ukraine so that he can pick up children from 3 different locations to come to church on Sunday. And he faithfully does that every week. What a wonderful pastor and human being he is. So on. We bought a computer for Vasil Underchuk so that he could do church business. This is the group of people at the Zaporizhia congregation. Not all of them, of course, but some of them there. Go ahead. And that's in Brezhnevaca. The onion domes there. And the pictures on the wall, of course, of many of those and such. So, any of you familiar with the Anderson Erickson Dairy in Des Moines and outside the facility? Any of you? Okay. This doesn't mean that much to you then. Outside the Anderson Erickson facility, there's a huge house with the 2 calves. Vandals came in and destroyed one of the calves, and so it's just now the cow and the calf. The cow stands probably about 10 feet high, big thing. And so I said, Anderson and Erickson has nothing over Kremlin. Kremlin has the cow as well, so this is that's their answer to Anderson Erickson. Go on. Shannon Bomey, when he was with me on one of the trips to Ukraine, one of the castles that we were at, beautiful, beautiful castle. Go ahead. Some more pictures of that. This man, not a Christian, but liked the church and was a friend to the church. And he wanted to make this stained glass for the circle that was empty on the church building. You recall for those pictures that I showed of that. And he put this together and has finished it. Is now a part of the church there in Kyiv. Okay, go on. Same thing, same picture going on there. We have some places, wayside chapels. They have their wayside onion domes. This is a German Lutheran grade school. Obviously not being used anymore, but this was in the southern part of Ukraine where many Germans located. You go through and you drive through some of the communities there, and you'll see a sign, Worms, Erfurt, Wittenberg. Am I in Ukraine? All these little communities there, that's where all the Germans settled, and so there were a lot of Germans. For you, Pastor Bader and Connie, I think you can, where are you at there? Here you are. I'm sure you remember coming over the hill and seeing the site of the church at Ivanica. Go on. Oh. Go back. One. Yeah. Oh, nope, right there. There. I don't know how you got there, but I would assume it was the same way I did, that you went through. Okay, I grew up on a farm, so I know what it was like from going from one field to another. You had one area on the side of the field that was worn down by the tractor tracks going there and taking the wagons there to another field way back there and whatever. Probably about 7 or 8 miles of going along the side of a field. And so I'm sitting there, where are we going? And all of a sudden, you pop over the hill, and there's the church. And it's like, whoa, okay. Unfortunately, I have some more pictures on one of the other things that I show of the church there in Ivanica. That is another one of the buildings that they still have and are using. Go on. And this is the German church in Mykolaiv. And you go inside, and it's just like something in Minnesota or Wisconsin. Go on. This is the inside of the church there. About 45, 50 people. This was their potluck. This is their meal that they had for us. I preached there that Sunday, and then we had a meal afterwards. And you betcha, in the middle there is the herring. Yeah, the herring and the sausages and things like that. Pastor Pashenko in his church in Zaporizhia and such. He gave me 20 more minutes. So Shannon Bolmy there. Yeah. Okay, I think we're getting to a point where, yeah, let's just show them just for the sake of showing them. Bombed out tank. Bombed out building. More bombed out. This was neat. Independence Day for Ukraine, and this is a parade that they had. They paraded all the burnt-out Russian tanks that were destroyed by the army, and they had them there. The kids were sitting on them, and they were taking pictures of them and stuff like that. Go on. Another one of the tanks. Not sure why it got so fuzzy on me. Go ahead. That's it. Okay. There is no more. Now I open up to you. Any questions you have for me, please